Welcome to our last video in this section. Here we're going to add some validation and finish up our form. That's going to give us an opportunity to make some changes, and you'll see how by adding validations you can make your life a lot easier, make your code shorter because you don't have to write all your own validations because we're going to use a library, and it will make your your form easier to maintain. So first things first, let's add some validations. You can obviously write your own, and there's a lot of libraries out there for validating. But in all honesty, right now, because Vue3 is new, not all libraries support Vue3 yet. So there's a couple different ones that do. In this one, we're actually going to use vee-validate. It does support Vue3 right now, so you can use it. So head over to the vee-validate. Make sure you're getting the one for Vue3 because obviously there's a Vue2 version. And you can install it. You go to the Getting Started page, and there will be a install. I'm not using yarn, I'm using npm, sorry. So here's the install. You're going to obviously want to take this and go to your terminal. But I'm also going to add one other that goes with it, which is yup. Yup, it allows you to write a schema-based validation. It just makes it a lot easier to scale. And in the future, if you want to do another one of these forms, but maybe it's much longer, this will allow you to actually extract your schema out to a separate JSON file, and then generate your form dynamically through that. So it's a good thing to have. It makes it really easy. And because it's the same basic process, the only thing I'm going to do is take that same one I took, the same command, and I'm just going to copy out the yup one, and I'm just going to paste it in here because again, it's doing the same thing. So let me go before and put in yup. Now I'm going to install this off camera because obviously it's going to take a little bit, but just by inserting the yup and then save, or npm install vee-validate and yup and then save it to our package.json file. All right, so I'm going to see you on the other side. Okay, so we've added those, and if you go to your json.package file, you'll see yup and you'll see vee-validate in here. So we're going to do that to make our life a little bit easier. But because vee-validate has a particular way of doing things, let's go to the documentation right quick. You have your getting started. You're going to want to head to, what is it, validations. Let's go to get started and validations, and we're actually going to use there's multiple ways to do it. Obviously you can write your own rules, which you can make it a method, or in this case, if you're using Vue3, you're going to want to do it as a regular function. But I'm going to validate the whole form. See, form level validation, which is near the bottom. Oh, excuse me, after the other one. So this is the method we're going to use right here. And as you'll notice, vee-validate, they have their own form component and their own field component. And you'll say, well, why did we write the other fields if we're going to just use somebody else's? Well, one, it's good to know how to do it for when you have to use your own, because just because we're going to use in this case, that doesn't mean you're always going to use vee-validate. Maybe your organization, I used to work for an organization that we could not install any libraries that were not already pre-approved. So you might not have the ability to use vee-validate. You might have to use something else that's already been pre-approved. So therefore, you may have to know how to still build your own components, your own everything for those. So it's good to have. They have their own, but not all is lost because we're still going to take those classes that we built prior and we're going to put it in this one. So here we have, and they give you the basics here. We're going to import the form field from validate. We're going to import yup, and here's our basic schema. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing. So and if you notice, they have their submit button inside their form. We didn't have our submit button inside our form, so we're going to do that. So let's look through our same basic information set and take this out. So I know this is going to apply. So what do I want to grab from here? I don't want to grab everything. I'm always leery to grab everything from anything, but I'm going to grab parts of different parts, and we'll come back to this page. So go in here, and we'll go to our initial step, where step 1 I think is where we were. There we go. And oh, I had it in the split screen. That's fine. Let's close this for a second. And we have our base input for full name and email and phone number. That's great. So we can still use all these things, and we're going to use this. Just to make my life easier and just to, for consistency's sake, I'm going to leave this part here, and I'm going to put the part we got from vee-validate after. Because again, that's going to be fine. Just so that I could remember exactly how I did it prior. So we grab that. We're going to import yup from yup and vee-validate. That's fine, because again, that's in our npm package in our package.json file. We still got everything else we need. That's fine. All right. And of course, because we've imported these, but we haven't registered, so we need to register our components. So let's register our form. Oops, if I could spell form, and our field, right? Just called field. Yep, field. We're good there. And of course, we haven't used yup yet, but we're about to use it. So, and again, they still have the example from Vue3. Excuse me, from Vue2 in here. So we're not exactly going to use this one. I'm gonna show you how to use this, but again, it's very similar because we're still going to use yup, and we're going to use the validate. See, they call it simple schema here, so that's fine. So let's look at how we're going to write these. And again, the documentation is pretty good. So let's look at how we're going to do this. So first thing we're going to do is I'm going to do above my buttons, just because consistency's sake I like to do my functions, if I can, how they appear on the screen. And so let's do a const schema. We'll do this as a yup object. And we're going to do, you have to do shape, and again, this is in the documentation. And I think the only thing I have to do, I think I did yup as lowercase yup from yup. So yeah, let me do it like that just to keep consistency. There you go. Yup. And of course we haven't registered anything, so it's gonna yell at us about not having registered our thing, but that's fine. We'll do that in a second. Actually, we can do it now. Let's register our schema. It's not register. We're going to put in our return statement. Okay. So if we look up here, we have these 3 we're going to be doing. This is the one we have our our name, our email, and our phone number. Pretty simple, right? So we're going to write these the same way as we would. So we're going to have to name these. So let's do name. We're going to say yup. And we're going to make sure it's a string. Oops. And it's going to be required. And then we're just basically going to write our return message, excuse me, our error message if they don't do it. If they don't include it, name is required. Right. And then again, this is just like a JSON object. So we're just going to put a comma, and then we're going to put whatever the next one is. So we're going to say phone, also same thing, yup. And it's going to be a string also. And we're going to do a couple different things with this one. We're going to make it a string. We're going to make it required. And we're going to give our message, phone number is required. But we're also going to do a matching. So we can do regex on it. So matches, and then we'll write our matches in here. And then what we'll do is we'll find a regex for it, and then we'll do our message for it as well. Phone number number must be in the format, and I'm going to use just a typical United States format. And again, so you're watching from overseas, you want to grab one that's going to fit you. In the United States, we typically will use this one. There you go. All right, so now let's go find a regex one. And if you know a lot about regex, you can write your own. I'm not going to lie, I typically just Google and find one and then use it. Let's go here and regex US phone number. Here we go. There's a lot of people who really know regex and it's great, but I tend to just Google it. It makes my life a little bit easier. Find one that fits of what I want. Here we go. This looks like it right here. One thing you gotta remember is to put the two slants in here. Oops. There we go. So you do the double slash and then you take your regex and you paste in between. So now we have our phone number. Pretty simple, right? Comment in there and we'll do our next one. Our next one was our email. And we'll do again, yup. And it's going to be a string still. And we're going to do both required and give the message. Email is required. And then we're also going to do, luckily, again, they have an email validator for us in this library, so we don't have to worry about that. So email, I'm going to do say email and then say email is invalid. If they don't put a proper type in there, it is invalid. And obviously, again, you could write your own if you want. I don't want to write my own. All right. So we have our basics of our yup schema. And again, you can add to this as much as you need to. But this is the basics. It's pretty simple. It's a string. If it's required, you write your message. If you need to do a regex, you do matches. And if it's one that pre-exists, one that's already made in here, you just say, hey, make it an email and your message. Pretty simple, right? So now what we'll do is we have this basics in here, and we're going to really do the same type of thing that we did before. Now here's where there's going to be a little bit of change. Let's grab these out just so we can get past this. Stay in here, and we were doing this for, and I just called the schema. I think I didn't call it simple schema. Here we go. Valid schema, and field. We didn't do these ones, so actually, I'm gonna do this a little bit different than what they have in here. So what I'm gonna actually do is I'm going to add it in some divs. So let's do div, closing div. Okay, and we'll do copy this, put it in here, except for this is going to be name, obviously, and our errors are going to be name. And again, because we already wrote our error messages down below in the schema, it will know to by default say, hey, as long as you name this the same, so name for field, name for errors, it will look in the schema to figure out what the name schema is for that. So that will make our life a lot easier in that regards. All right, so what else are we going to do? We're good. We added our V model. We have our, I'm going to add the class to these for if there's an error. Actually, I'm gonna add it here because I want to do a couple of different things in here for our name input. We have our V model, and I'll show you the first one, and then we'll jump ahead to by default have the others done because no point in watching me type all these other ones. We're going to add a class, a dynamic class. So if there's an error, it will show as red around the input field. So I'll call it is invalid, maybe. Sounds like a decent enough name. And we're going to say errors business name. Oops, name. I'm already thinking about another form I'm doing, so excuse me. Oh, I gotta surround this with quotes. Okay, there you go. All right, so let's see. And our value, oops, similar to what we did before, which is our value is going to come from our pre-existing global state. Obviously, you don't have to do this because we're going to change it, but there are, at least for me, there are times where I have to grab certain things from an API. Even if it's client API, like we'll do a search and we'll say, hey, go out there and grab this data. If it exists, pull it in. If it doesn't exist, just leave it blank, and then the people will fill it in. But if they exist, bring them in. So that's what I'm going to do here too. So I'm going to say value by default is going to be the same as the state value, which is, again, right now is blank, so it doesn't make a difference. But if you're calling from an API, you're going to want to call, I keep doing this. Yeah. There you go. Value is going to be from the state. All right. And of course, we're going to add some classes. So let's do one. Actually, let me put this in a div. I don't want to do this in a span right now. Let's do another div for the classes itself. I mean, for the errors themselves. All right, cool. So now this one, we're going to just add a class in here also for our errors. And what am I going to call this? You know, for right now, what I'm thinking I'm going to do is just in the future add another class, and I'll probably assign the class as errors, but it'll be using the red from Tailwind. And then here we're going to do errors dot name. Okay, and I'm gonna get rid of this one for now because again, I'm gonna do it as a div. You could do it as a span. It really doesn't matter. All right. Now you might notice a couple different issues that we're going to have. It probably won't yell at us right now, but right now we don't have these error classes, and that's fine. So what we'll do is we'll jump in and we'll actually add this. Now a couple different things we're going to want to do. Let's look at two things first. We have our base input, right, which has these classes already pre in it. What we're going to do is we're going to add to the tailwind class. We're going to extend it and add these, because we're not writing our own components now, at least for these parts, we're going to extend it into the tailwind components. So we're going to do a couple different things. Let's jump into config first. And in our config, I'm going to add an errors class. Now again, you don't have to do it this way, obviously. Colors is going to be red. So I just want my errors to show up as red. Okay, simple enough. And then we're going to go into our tailwind.css and we're going to start adding some classes in here. And the only thing we're going to do is take our classes from our base input and we're going to put it directly into our CSS. That way it spreads to the different components. So how do you do that in Tailwind? Again, if you go to documentation, they explain it pretty well. We're going to add a layer and we're going to say our components. And then what we're going to do is start adding our classes. So let's call it input box. We'll do two. We'll do input label, if I can spell. And you have to do apply. There we go. And let's grab our input label. Here's our label, class text small, neutral. There you go. Simple enough, right? Input label, pretty simple. Now let's add another one for our input box. Input box. This is just going to be the information surrounding thing. So for there, we're going to grab our classes that we have here. So this bit of knowledge that we had from before is not going to be wasted. We're just going to move it around to another place. And again, I will still keep these in here for if I need it someplace else. Because say I need a form that doesn't need validation for whatever reason, I may want to describe my base input rather than add another library. And it doesn't hurt because again, I'm going to move this folder out someplace away from I'll make a copy of this folder and put it someplace else with all my UI inputs and my CSS and that kind of stuff. That way, if I need another project, I just bring it in. I could set it up and then redo my template and yada, yada, yada. So that's great. So now we have these. And because we have those, now we can keep things pretty simple. Is there anything else we need for these? You know what I may do? I may do a form item one also. Let's do that. Class form item. And the only thing that's going to be is this information here, how we set up our div. Because I want it just to be in a column format. And again, obviously, you want them to wrap, you do those things. I'm going to make a flex column. So now we got our 3 base classes in here. This is yelling at me about something. What am I missing? Okay, you probably noticed I had forgotten to put apply on the last one. I was like, what in the world is this thing yelling? Well, it wasn't yelling. Let me rephrase that. Because I noticed the colors hadn't changed. I must have had an error somewhere. So I want to check out where that was. So let's look at where we are. And oh yeah, I forgot I haven't changed the actual home one yet. So let's go to step 1. Okay, cool. So we have our basics in here. Great. All right. Cool. All right, so now what we're going to do is, so we have our basic CSS in here. Let's jump back to our step 1. And we're going to put some of these in. Actually, I'm going to put it over here just so I can see the 2 side by side. And we'll start adding our classes. So we have our class of our field in here. Okay. Sorry. So we have our basic class in here of, what is it? We have our dynamic class. Let's add our static class now. And that's going to be our, what was it, field input? Input box. Input box. And for the field, we're actually going to put a label in here too. So let's do a label class input label, and we're going to say that this is going to be name, right? Should we say full name? Label. Let's look. Okay, cool. So, brought in our classes as we expect. Text small, neutral 800. So, great. Actually, you know what? I don't know if I want the text as neutral. Now that I'm looking at it, I think I'm going to actually change this. And this good thing about theming is I'm not going to make the label neutral. I'm going to make it a primary color. Just so it's a little bit more consistent with what the rest of what we have. So we changed that to, oh, you know what? The issue is I still have the other ones up here. It goes right here, full name. And you see change the color to the primary. Took me a second. I was looking at this. I was like, why I didn't change the colors? I still have the other ones, and it's all right. So what we'll do here is, let's comment these out so we don't get ahead of ourselves here. There we go. All right. So we have our class label in here. We have our inputs here, and we'll do this as, we'll use our class. We say form item, just so it kind of lines them up. Flexback style. submit error. Base input of flashes up in error and then disappears. And still, base input component has been registered but not used. Really, sometimes the our stuff gets out of hand where just because you don't use it gives you an error. It's not really an error. It's more like a warning, but it's ridiculous. All right, save. And again, it depends on the prettier you're using or how you have the project set up. All right, so full name now, and we have it here. So great. So let's put in our other ones very quickly. So we can kind of just copy this other one and then change the appropriate name. So let's close this for a second. Okay, so we'll make 3 of these, and we'll do it for phone number. Just call it phone. Phone. Oh. Here we go. State phone. Not state phone like that. Because again, it's JSON object, but there we go. All right, phone, 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 and then the last one is email, right? Email. 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 And email. Oops, gotta make sure we change our errors also email, because you want them showing up under each one, and it's not name. Obviously, it's phone and email. So there we go. So there's our 3. There we go. And now we have our things. Now, the only difference is, if you notice, they have these. Let's show you on full screen. Okay. Remember from our vee-validate, they have this submit, validate, on submit, excuse me, at submit, submit. Now, we don't have an at submit button where we can, but we already made our own button, so we may as well use that. So, and we called it that function nav next, not submit, because again, we're going to our next page. Now with our fields, here we go. Delete those out. The only thing we're going to do is we're going to move these buttons inside of our form. Okay. And now what we'll do is we'll actually take this at click function off here, because it's going to do it by default on the phone. But we're still going to do the same things as we would do, which is push this and push that. Okay, super simple. Now the good thing about this library is we don't have to tell it to then if this then that. Like normally if you write your own validations, you say, hey, roll through these errors. If this list of errors appears, go forward. That's me, don't go forward. Show these errors. If not, then go forward. With this library, you don't have to do that at all. We're just going to say, check it and do it. And we don't have to add it. Only thing we're going to do here is we're going to take the values of the form, and then we're going to console log. We submitted it, even though or I should say next, right? And then we'll say JSON. I'm going to stringify it just so we can see in the console. Stringify. And we're going to stringify the values. There you go. All right. So now we have these, and if we do, we'll go to step 2, right? And so let's save. And we have our information set. You see the other submit button pushed away. So I'll say, yeah, attach to rant. That's fine. Oh, you know what we should have done? Let's do this now. Let's add a placeholder actually in the phone because we want to tell them what format we're expecting. It'd be kind of mean to just tell the people that they have to do something and then not show them what we want. So let's do a placeholder. And we should be able to add it directly in like this. So let's try. And then if not, we'll figure it out. Placeholder. And we'll do format of will that work like that? It should. Yep. Refresh the page. There you go. So put the placeholder in. Great. All right. So now we'll say test rant, and say I do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 0. Oh, there you go. So here's our issue here for us. Oh no, we didn't do it correctly. So we'll change it. And now we should be good. Email is required. I'll do my generic email. And step 2. And let's go to our console. And as you can see, we put it here in our. That was JSON stringify. And go to our components and state. And it also updated the state. So here's our email, here's a phone number, and here's my name. So super simple. We're able to add basic validation pretty simply, in all honesty. This library is really good. And again, our classes didn't get lost because it allows you to put your own classes in. So we just moved them to our config file for our errors. We put in our classes from our base inputs, and we put it in our field inputs here. So we're able to do that, and we just change it to our tailwind CSS file, and we're able to do that. And now you really have everything you could ever need for a good form. We have it in state. So again, if you're reaching out from an API maybe, you can grab it and put it in state from there. You can start off as blank. You could do both. I've had forms where I've had to start out with a base state of, just empty base state. Then they would have to go to like a SAP API to search for their business or search for whatever, their HiCAM's number or their DUNS number. They grab it, and it grabs additional information about their business. So it grabs their name, it grabs the address, it grabs the DUNS number, it grabs whatever. It fills the form in dynamically, and then we left open fields for them to put in the specific contact information. So yes, it's business, Tom's Plumbing, but the contact person is, his wife, Jane Doe. So she fills in the contact information, but we can then pass along all the information from the API, the information she filled in, and we pass along the state. So when we submit it to our backend database, now we have everything we need. And so this is really the end. This is super duper long, but there was a lot in this, and I would have felt neglected to just kind of gloss over stuff because, again, there's been too many times I've seen where people will have these tutorials and they'll do all the stuff off screen, but then they won't have a GitHub repo except for what it looks like at the end. And that's not helpful if you're trying to follow because you have no idea what they did. But again, each of the repos is there. I'll add this new one up for add validation in this one, and then you will have it. So you got everything you need to move forward and have a decent form, which will allow you to think. And if we had buttons in here for previous and next, we could go back and forth through the form as well. So if they reach all the way to the end and we had a confirmation screen, we could then say, oh, wait a minute, hold on. I put Jane when I should have put Jeremiah, I don't know. And so you can jump back through the form and then do it from there. So that's the good news. You're all done. Thank you for sticking with me all the way to the end, and I really hope you learned something. I'll see you on the next time. Bye-bye.